Today I'm going to talk about lifestyle and the importance of green time versus screen time for your children. Lifestyle medicine is a whole new area in medicine with a lot of research going on, because it is very, very clear that how we live our lives in terms of how much exercise we get, how much time we spend in nature, how much time we spend in front of screens, affects how healthy we are, and in children, how well their brains develop, their mood, their behavior, their sleep. It's really incredibly important. And today I want to go through some of the research for you about this, and then also give you some practical tips that you can implement today to get your children to be happier and healthier. So I'm going today through the benefits of time spent in nature and the research about that, about exercise for not just our bodies, but our children's brains, about limiting screen time because of the effects that too much screen time has on our children's brains, and for example, an increased risk of ADHD for children who spend too much time on screens early on. And also, last but not least, stress reduction, the importance of learning to chill. We all know about ADD and ADHD, but there are some researchers who now name all of these issues in children's behavior and impulsivity and lack of focus and attention, and even more general issues with behavior and mood and learning, NDD, nature deficit disorder. And that's a term that Richard Louv came up with in his wonderful book, Last Child in the Woods, which I urge you to have a look at. And it really goes through the importance of living a little bit more how we evolved to live. And if you think of us as hunter-gatherers, we spend most of our time in nature. So our brains are actually evolved to be in green environments and to be active and moving around in nature. And when we do that, of course, we are healthier and fitter because we move more. Children develop more motor skills if they're outdoors, exercising and climbing trees. But it also affects our brain, and we actually have less stress and more resilience. And resilience is a hot topic these days in research. How do we make people more resilient? How do we raise children who are resilient, who can cope with things that may not go 100% their way and learn from it and move on? And then time spent in nature increases even your ability to focus, to pay attention, for creative problem solving, and for constructive and imaginative play. So in Europe, there are a lot of forest kindergartens now, where children actually no longer go into a building to go to preschool, but they go into the forest, and they spend their whole day, summer and winter, in the forest. They may have a little shack where they can, warm up if it gets really, really cold and when it's snowing. But in general, they're outdoors, and they don't have toys, but they play in the woods and they play within nature. And those children actually are healthier than children who go to regular preschools. Their immune systems are stronger, their bodies are stronger, and they are much more creative. So the research is really interesting on that. And I wish there were more of these here as well. Now, nature has a calming effect on the brain. And one way it does it is it increases endorphin levels in the brain. So endorphins are homemade morphine. It's what we produce when we're happy, when we, for example, go for a run and people get a runner's high, or if we just go for a walk in the park. That already increases your endorphin levels. And that's one of the easiest ways to reduce stress. And I want you to look at this picture and think, how do you feel when you look at that? I bet you feel less stressed than you were a few minutes ago. And that's the effect of just looking at an image of nature. Now just imagine you were in that place for real. And that's what we need to provide for our children, more time spent in nature. When you think about how we, once again, how we evolved as hunter-gatherers, spending most of our time in nature, looking for fruits and vegetables and mushrooms and things we could eat. walking, being active, and getting sunshine, getting vitamin D. And nowadays we do the opposite. We spend most of our time indoors. And not only that the indoor environment isn't that healthy, so there's more pollution actually indoors than outdoors, but it also doesn't give you, you know, the chlorophyll, that green color that filters everything, doesn't give you the looking at the blue sky, doesn't give you that opportunity of looking into the far distance, which is really important for our eyes. And of course, you know, what do we do indoors? You know, we do a lot of things that we not evolved to do, like looking at screens. So how can we fight this nature deficit disorder? Well, green play is the new buzzword. So there's a lot of research going into this now. There's a wonderful couple of researchers who do nothing but this research. And every month there's new studies coming out to show us that exposure to everyday green spaces may help things even like ADHD. Children who spend time in green areas have less ADHD symptoms, better concentration, better focus, and are less hyperactive. And these don't have to be like a big hike into the woods. It can just be, you know, even walking around the neighborhood with trees, or going to a little park near your home, or going into a garden if you're lucky enough to have one. So it doesn't have to be a big thing to get out into nature. You can use what is nearby you. There was a very recent study that showed that kids who are raised in areas that have more green actually have a higher IQ compared to children who are raised in areas without trees and without much green. So we really are evolved in nature, and we need that connection to nature to develop optimally. Now, even after a walk in the park, children concentrate better. There are lots of studies on this, and I'm giving you the references to these studies and at the end of the lecture, so that you can look them up if you're interested in reading the detail. But the main thing to remember is that the brains of children develop better if they're exposed to green spaces. So think trees. And then of course, you know, so there are many, many ways that can explain this effect. And one that is quite important, I think, is also because wherever you have more green, you have less pollution. And pollution, of course, is not good for children's brains. So I think it's partly just having that green, looking at green, breathing fresh air, cleaner air, and being active, moving rather than sitting in front of a screen. There are many, many different ideas of what you can do to get your children outdoors. I know it can be hard. My own boys, who are now almost 19 and 24, grew up on a beach in New Zealand where it wasn't so hard to get them outdoors. But, you know, even them, I sometimes had to drag them off their screens or their books and say, it's time to get outside. And it's a good idea to come up with, you know, a list of things that your children enjoy doing with your children. Have a little family meeting and sit down and say, let's write down or let's draw ideas of what we can do outdoors. I'm giving you a long list here of things you may include, but it's actually good if the ideas come from your children. So, you know, you can just go for a scooter ride in the park. You can, of course, go to the playground. You can just go skip roping or climb a tree, build a sandcastle. Go to the beach if you have one nearby, surf or swim or go paddling. On weekends, take the whole family and go for a hike somewhere. You know, make a list of your favorite hikes within half an hour, an hour's drive from your home. And at home, grow a veggie garden. It's so wonderful for children to see vegetables grow, and then it actually encourages them to eat them. And if you don't have a garden, you can just have a little planter box in your kitchen or on your balcony if you have one. And, you know, camping, you don't have to go far. You can just pitch a tent in your backyard and make that a little adventure. So there are lots of ideas, and just pick one every week and do that and start your journey towards a more green and living. Now, apart from just having that effect of the green on your brain, the stress reducing and concentration boosting effect when exercise, of course, comes along with being outdoors. Exercise is very, very important for us. We are evolved to be moving. We're not evolved to be couch potatoes. And unfortunately, that's what we're turning into. 2/3 of Australians, New Zealanders, and Americans are either overweight or obese. And that is terrible. We are facing an epidemic of obesity, and that is fueling the epidemic of diabetes and heart disease and cancer. It's all related. So if we can get our children into really good habits early on, they will continue with those habits lifelong and will be healthier and happier and live longer. So exercise. How much exercise should a child get? At least 60 minutes a day. Now, you can sign up your children for classes, which is fine, but you don't have to. You can go for a 60-minute walk. You can go to the park and run around. You can throw a ball. You can play padel or badminton. There are so many different ways of getting your children to be active, but it is really important. Keep that 1 hour a day in mind. It really is the minimum. It reduces your stress hormones, which is what we all need. Everyone is stressed these days. And it also, of course, helps you burn calories. You get more blood flow into the whole body, including your brain, and improved blood flow to the brain means your brain functions better. But it's also great for your immune system. So exercises increases your white blood cells who are fighting infection, fighting viruses and bacteria. You produce more antibodies, once again, to fight infection, increases your body temperature, which is our body's way of killing off invaders like germs. So exercise is the best medicine for everything, for your body and your brain. So get your children to be active for 1 hour a day. And if 1 hour a day seems daunting at first, start with 15 minutes, go and just say every week we're going to go up by 15 minutes, and within 4 weeks you'll be at your hour. It's good for you too. It is, it will improve your health as well. So kids who exercise regularly are overall fitter. They have a better body mass index, which means they're not overweight. They also have improved motor skills, which is so important. We expect our children to do beautiful handwriting at 5 or 6 or 7 years of age, but you need really good motor skills for that. And it starts with the big muscles. So if you want good motor skills for handwriting, those fine skills, you actually have to develop your large muscles like your shoulders and your upper arms first. So things like monkey bars, or doing the wheelbarrow where you hold your child's feet and they walk on their hands is fantastic for that. And it really helps over time to get beautiful handwriting. The increased blood flow, of course, to the body and the brain, important not just to bring more blood and oxygen there, but also to clean up the brain and remove any toxins that have been produced. It reduces your stress hormones, increases happiness. Children sleep better after they have exercised. And I see so many children who struggle to fall asleep. Children who just have their minds racing in the evening in bed, or who are just not tired because they haven't used their bodies. They haven't been active all day. So doing that 1 hour of exercise helps children sleep. And sleep is incredibly important for, again, your immune system, your health, your brain function. So get your children to exercise. One of the added benefits of being outdoors for your exercise is that you get vitamin D. So, we are evolved to spend most of our time outdoors, living near the equator, where the sun is kind of always at the right angle to produce vitamin D by hitting our skin. And we're evolved to being outdoors actually without wearing a lot of clothes. Now, that's how we got the optimal amount of vitamin D for our skin. Now we've moved away from the equator to the north and south, where there is the sun is at an angle where it doesn't produce a lot of vitamin D or as easily, especially in the winter. In the summer, it's fine. And we're closed. We're covering ourselves, slip, slap, slop, which is important to avoid getting skin cancer, but reduces your vitamin D exposure. And I test a lot of children's vitamin D levels, and in the winter, most of them are low or deficient in vitamin D, which does affect the immune system and their brains and their mood. So really important to get that vitamin D. And the easiest way is to by being outdoors and getting some sun exposure, safe sun exposure. And the other magic thing that happens when your children spend more time outdoors is that they spend less time on screens. And of course, screen time is the new lifestyle, unfortunately, and we have to fight it because it's not good for our children. The more time children spend on screens before they're 3 years old, the higher the risk that they will get a diagnosis of ADHD later in life. And the reason is that in those first few years of life, the brain develops incredibly fast. And every experience is actually built into the brain. So think of, every time you read a book to your children, those, stories actually are part of the structure of the brain. The more you read to them, the more they will love reading. The more time they spend on screens, the more they're adapted to very fast moving things. And then sitting in a classroom may be just really boring compared to the, watching a cartoon. So cut down the screen time. The American Academy of Pediatrics comes out with new recommendations for screen time use every couple of years. And I have to say, it is becoming more lenient, actually. It used to be, no more than an hour and none after 3 years of age. So now, because everybody is on screens all the time, they feel they have to be more realistic, which is true. There is no child who's not exposed to screens at all. So the new recommendation is avoid screens for children under 18 months completely. And then for those below 5 years of age, keep it to 1 hour a day at the most. And make sure that the time they spend on screens is actually valuable time. So make it something educational or something sociable. So if you're on FaceTime with your grandparents because they live far away, that is actually okay. Or if it's something, educational, you don't need to teach your 2-year-old to read and write, but, they can learn about something in the world through that, and do it together with your child. Don't use it as a babysitter, ideally, but, watch it with your child and talk about it. And, that used to be what we recommended for watching TV. Of course, TV is kind of out. Everybody's on their individual little programs now. But, communicating about what's happening on the screen is a way of developing the right parts of the brain, the communication, the sociable part of the brain, which is the most important part of the brains of young children to develop. Now, for older children over 5, the recommendation is now reasonable limits, which, depends on what you consider reasonable. But I also think it's really important to sit down with your older children and discuss that, and say, what do you want to do? Let's set a limit. Let's get a timer that we put on and agree on, how much time you'll spend on there, and the timer you will see, and I'll remind you 5 minutes before it's over that it's going to end, so that they're not pulled off their screen in the middle of doing something, which would annoy anyone. So it is clear that screen time affects concentration, focus, mood, and behavior. And if you have children and you've had them on screens, you will agree with me that they can become very irritable when you want them to come off. So, having kind of clear expectations and good routines in place, and also good modeling. It's very important for us parents not to do the opposite of what we tell our children to do. So, remember that. So the physical effect of screens and blue light is really important to discuss with our children as well. So the screens emit a blue light, and that blue light hits our retina, the back of our eyes, and stops us from producing melatonin. Now, melatonin is the hormone that we produce at night when it gets dark, and that helps us fall asleep and sleep through the night. It's also a powerful antioxidant. So it's really important for our health and for our sleep. if you spend time on screens just until you go to bed, it's going to be hard for you or your child to fall asleep. So you need to come off screens at least 2 hours before bedtime, or you need to put on some kind of filter on your computer. You can get those now, like f.lux, that turn the color actually when the sun sets from blue to orange. Or you can even get orange glasses to filter the blue light out. So, you know, if your teenager has to do homework until late or study for HSC, then you can do those kind of things to help. But, you know, ideally, of course, if we can limit screen time, then we should stop at 2 hours before bedtime, and it will improve sleep. Another negative effect of spending too much time in front of screens is digital eye strain. And that's becoming a real major problem. And more children are getting fitted with glasses because their eyes just get exhausted from this constant looking at a very close distance. We are evolved to look far away into the distance. And I would urge you to get your children to take breaks every 15 minutes or so, to just take a 2 or 3 minute break and just, you know, stop looking at the screen and looking in the distance. That's really, really important. In countries like Singapore, where children spend a lot of time on screens and there isn't a lot of nature, so not a lot of, you know, a possibility to look far into the distance, they have an epidemic of myopia. So a lot of short-sighted children who need glasses because they can't see without it. So, and that's increasing, you know, even in Australia, New Zealand, and the United States, but you can do something about it. And that is not spending all your time looking at a close distance. Children can also get headaches, you know, blurry vision just from looking at computers all day. That's called computer vision syndrome. And you can get that too. So really, really important if you get that to just take a break from the computer or the iPad. Last but not least, you know, computers can cause behavior problems. They can become addictive. You actually, you know, and with the computer games, they are geared at increasing your dopamine, which is your reward neurotransmitter that goes up when you become addicted to something. So you really need to look at that, discuss it with your children, come up with a family list of rules for computer use and stick to it. And also, you know, monitor the content as much as you can. I mean, you do not want your children to play violent games. They are produced in order to desensitize people to violence. And I think that's never a good thing. We want a kinder society and a kinder world, not a more violent world. So getting our children's brains to, you know, learn to find it's okay to kill people is not working in that direction. So I would always ban violent games from my home and recommend that for everyone. So the practical tips, things you can do today. You sit down with your family and make a media plan, you know, discuss together as a family what the content should be, the time limits, how are you going to stick to those time limits. Get a little kitchen timer, or you can use your phone for the timer, but have a timer there so that your child knows, because they lose track of time. If you tell them you can be on the computer for an hour now, if you let them, they would 3 hours later not realize the hour was over. And make it social if you can, join in. There is a lovely website called healthychildren.org where they give you help to start that family media plan. And I urge you to go to that website and check it out. Now, other practical tips are, you know, find fun non-screen activities, you know, play some board games, bring out the crayons and the paper and just do some drawing together, or, you know, go and get a skip rope out and jump together in a skip rope or kick a ball. You know, find things and make that list again, make it together with your children, have them draw little images if they can't write yet of things that they enjoy doing. And then you have, you know, once you have a little stack of those, you can pull one out and say, oh, now we're going to do this one. Another important one is no screens at meal times. And you parents have to set the example. If you have your phone on the table and answer every single message you get during the meal, your children are going to learn that from you. So just put the phones away, move everything away, turn off the TV, and make meal times a sociable time. And don't have screens in bedrooms. That's a rule I've always had for my family, and it's worked out really well. I mean, for one thing, if the computers or whatever everybody uses is in a common area, you have much more control over the content, because your children are not going to be able to play games if you're in the same room doing your work or whatever you're doing. Whereas if in their bedrooms, you know, you don't have any control over either the time or the content. And, you know, bedrooms are for sleeping. They're not for spending hours and hours on screens. And always remember the model, the good tech behavior. Children do what you do, not what you tell them. And it really works out. If you do the right thing, they will follow in your footsteps. Now, we've talked about the importance of green time, of exercise in our day, and of limiting screens and making it a positive experience. And now I want to talk about reducing stress. We have a huge epidemic of stress. I mean, the levels of anxiety, depression amongst children and adolescents are skyrocketing. It's very scary. And in my practice, every week I see children who are anxious, who are depressed, who lack motivation, who can't sleep because they're nervous. And the question always is, what can we do? Do we just give a medication, which maybe sometimes may help, but it's really just a Band-Aid. It doesn't address the underlying causes. So important number one step is try and find the underlying causes. Then do the lifestyle changes I just talked about, and find ways of reducing stress. And there are beautiful ways to do that. I'll go through now. But for me, the number one thing is always try and find the cause of a problem. Now, if the cause of your child's stress is the older brother, you can't eliminate the older brother, but maybe you can work on the behavior of the older brother, and find some good parenting strategies or see if the child needs some special support. But many times it is, too much time on screens, maybe overscheduling the child, too many things that are just stressful. Maybe there's too much media of scary things that the child doesn't understand yet, but stresses them out. Or maybe there's too much stress on the family, the parents fighting, so on. So all of those things, bullying at school can be addressed and can be eliminated. So emotional stress has the same effect on cells as chemical toxins. Remember that. So that you have the same kind of oxidative stress and effect on cells not working 100% when you are stressed emotionally. So we really need to work on that and reduce the stress levels. Chronic stress puts children into this fight or flight high adrenaline level where, they cannot relax. They don't sleep well. They're restless in their sleep. They're never really calm. Their brain is always just on edge. And that has an effect on the hippocampus, which is the area of the brain important for learning, for memory, and processing what you have learned. So, just having a lot of stress will affect your ability to learn. And it also has an effect on that prefrontal cortex, the area important for working memory and executive function, for planning, and for impulsivity. The young kids, they cannot plan. They just do what they want to do. But as children grow up, we want them to be a little bit more thoughtful. And that's that prefrontal cortex. And if you are stressed constantly, that prefrontal cortex is not going to develop as easily as if you're calm. And for you, maybe more than your children, a very important fact is that your telomeres, which are parts of inside your cells that can measure the age, your cellular age, they shorten if you're chronically stressed. So you're probably going to die younger if you're chronically stressed. So whatever you can do to reduce your stress now will help you and your children be happier and healthier. So what can you do? There's, you know, a multitude of options. You can do some yoga. You can get an app called, for example, the Smiling Mind app that was developed at the University of Queensland, and there's a free app. Wonderful for learning how to do guided imagery, relaxation exercises, breathing exercises, helping to fall asleep, or just listening to music. So there are lots and lots of different options on there, and it's very well researched, very well done. You may just want to listen to some music, put some music on for your children that chills them out. And maybe it may be something to look at is parenting, positive parenting. Because, you know, often when we are all stressed and it runs to the family, if, you know, if a child is stressed, the family is stressed. And if the parents are stressed and react in a stressed and, you know, negative way to the stressed child, everything just gets worse and worse and worse. It's that negative cycle. But if you are calm and you can respond to your child's stress with kindness and calmness and positivity, you actually can turn your child's stress around as well. So I highly recommend the Triple P Positive Parenting Program, once again from the University of Queensland, really well researched and has shown to be able to turn around stress in the family, and children whose parents have done that have really good outcomes in the long term of being, you know, more sociable, having less behavior problems, and doing well at school and in life. So relaxation. What does relaxation do to our brains and to our bodies? So it's a brain workout. You know, learning to relax is a skill that you can learn just like you can train a muscle at the gym. So it is, you know, whatever parts of the brain you use a lot, they become stronger. And so we want to use that part that relaxes in order to become stronger. And with that, we also help our children to improve their focus, concentration, and learning. A lot of schools are now introducing relaxation exercises, breathing exercises, yoga into the classroom routine, because they know that once the children have done that, they actually learn better and they're calmer. Relaxation also helps your immune system. And that's, of course, you know, an important thing. We want our children to have healthy, strong immune systems so that they don't get sick often. And it improves inflammation. So inflammation is, you know, when you think about, you know, when you have an inflamed joint, it's swollen and red and hot and it hurts. And we can have that same inflammation anywhere in the body. It may not, you know, have the same symptoms, but even things like anxiety and depression are actually, when it comes down to the cellular level, due to inflammation in the brain. So if we can reduce that inflammation just by doing some relaxation exercises, how wonderful, you know, to have that effect on our immune system. And relaxation even improves your bone strength. Who would have thought that? You know, we all think we just have to have lots of calcium, but it's not just that, you know. People who are less stressed have stronger bones and are overall much healthier. So check out that Smiling Mind app for your family. What are some practical tips to reduce stress? Things you could do today. So I'm a big believer in not flooding children with homework, especially young children. If they have spent 6 hours at school learning and concentrating, they should actually have time after school to play, to be creative, to be active, to move, to do things that they enjoy. I think the most important thing is to, in terms of learning, is to foster a love for learning. And if you have to have fights every afternoon with your child about, homework, that's not going to do that. Your children are going to resent learning, and that's, not good for the rest of their lives, because once they love to learn, no matter what they're interested in, they will do it. They will want to learn about those things. And that's how people become successful. So less homework, more play. Don't overschedule your children. So if you have a child who loves to dance and wants to go to dance classes 5 times a week, fine. But a lot of children actually, we recently had a lockdown because of COVID-19. And I've had a lot of feedback from families that their children were actually quite happy not to have to rush off every afternoon to a different place and just to be home and play. So, I mean, that may be one of the few positive things coming out of that. Kids need free play time. The more free play they have, the less stress. You can play with them, or they can play by themselves. But if you give children just a few toys rather than giving them all the instructions and what they need to do, they often become much more creative at using them. I mean, my youngest son, if I just gave him a piece of paper, some crayons, some glue, and a pair of scissors, he would come up with the most amazing things. I mean, I remember when he was like 6 years old, and he said, I want a computer. And I said, well, I'm sorry, you're too young to have a computer. And I gave him those things. And within an hour, he'd built himself a computer out of paper. It was so cute. And I thought, well, that's really actually a very creative solution. Now he had his computer, and it was even a laptop that he could take along with him. So, let your kids be creative. It is so good for their brains, and it actually reduces stress. Do those relaxation exercises, guided imagery, learning to just go through the whole body and relaxing one part of it at a time. Great for the whole family. Music can be super relaxing, calming on the brain. They are for older children. There are special channels that you can play music that's actually good for focus and concentration, like the Brain FM, which I use myself when I need to focus. But, just listening to some beautiful, calm music, like Baroque music, there's lots of research to show that it calms down the brain waves and puts you in a more relaxed state of mind. Many children love massage. You can add some essential oils if you want. Just that touching increases your endorphin levels, which calms down the brain and the stress levels. So that may be a great way to end the day. For young babies in particular, if they're quite upset, if you just take their little feet and stroke with one finger the inside of their feet, just that edge, and just do that for a minute or two, you'll see that they'll calm down. It's a really beautiful way of just chilling out a baby or a child. So don't forget massage. Lots of research out there on massage, calming down stress. Really, really good. And sign up for that parenting course, that positive parenting course, if you feel it may be something that can help you. I want to talk about just one little positive parenting exercise that I love, and that's called the marble jar. And what you do is you take an empty glass jar and you put it on the counter where everybody can see it. And together with your children, you decide actually, but you share it with your children what the goal is, one behavior for a week that you want to work on. And that may just be, for example, that when you talk to your children, that they respond. That's often an issue that families have, that you tell your child to do something and they don't even look at you and you say it 10 times. But, you can train that. So if you say, hi, Michael, look at me. And he looks at you the first time and then does what you tell him, but even just the looking at it, if he does that, a marble goes into the jar. And if you have more than one child, make it something that they can work on together so that they can together fill up that jar. And the faster they fill up the jar, the quicker they get their reward, which may be something like, I don't know, going for a hike, going to the beach. It doesn't have to be a toy. It can be just a positive experience, something that they would enjoy. So, you know, in the beginning, you have to make it quite easy to fill that jar. So you want to do it something that your child can actually, you know, within a week, that jar will be full. So make it maybe big marbles in the beginning and be generous. You know, every time they do it, just quickly put on a marble and praise them. Tell them, that's wonderful. Look, another marble goes into the jar. And so after a week, they get their reward, and then you empty the marble jar and you start again. And over time, you know, you come up every week with one behavior you're working on. And it can become a bit more difficult over time to fill that jar. You know, it has to, you know, the kids have to cooperate more and more. But it's a great way. And I have seen many, many families get their children to clean up their bedrooms, do their chores, and, you know, come on walks, for example. You know, whatever you choose as a behavior, but it's a very lovely, positive parenting skill. And if you still need something else to help your children relax, get a pet. There's no better psychologist or therapist than your dog. And this is my son when he was younger, and our dog, who no longer is with us, unfortunately, but he was the best calming presence in our house. You know, when the kids were upset or stressed, they would just go and cuddle the dog. They slept with the dog. It was a wonderful pillow, warm living pillow. And there is lots of research out on how animals reduce stress in children. For example, a child who's stressed out about reading, if you tell them, okay, you read to the dog, they actually read better. And the reason is that the dog doesn't judge them. He doesn't say every other thing, no, that was wrong. The dog is just quiet. And that's maybe we have to learn from that as well, by not being so quick to judge and to be negative, but just to be quiet and give some positive encouragement. But there's a lot we can learn from dogs, but that would be the first thing I'd go for. So, you know, if you can, it doesn't have to be a dog. It can be, we used to have rats as pets, which were wonderful pets. They were so sweet and attached to our children. They actually would live in our children's sleeves and just be there while they did their homework or their reading, and they loved it. So you can get a small pet. It doesn't have to be a big one. So for happy and healthy children, my prescription is spend time in nature. It's beneficial for their body and their brains. Exercise for at least an hour a day. Limit the screen time and reduce stress and practice relaxation. The more you practice, the better you and your children will get at it. Thank you so much for joining me today and learning about lifestyle, the importance of lifestyle for your children's health and happiness. And just a reminder that this is part of a 4-part lecture series. And I urge you to also look at nutrition, avoiding toxins, and sleep, because they all are fundamentals for raising happy and healthy children and teenagers. And remember that at the end of this lecture, you have handouts with practical tips that you can print out and implement today, and also the references to the research that I quote in case you want to go and look at some of those studies. So thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.